He's Jim Stewart. I'm Rick Collins, and this is Off the Bench. We've got a lot of football to talk about this weekend. We had a huge college football weekend. We're looking at, who's making their run at those college football playoff positions.
We take a look at the NBA, but let's first start with the Cowboys. The Cowboys defeated the Chiefs. We knew it was going to be a tight game, but the Cowboys made it not look that hard.
No, in fact, they kind of distanced themselves at the end of the game, especially with the running game. We thought Kansas City, bringing in Kareem Hunt, they were going to have the running game going against this Cowboys defense, but really it didn't work out that way. The Cowboys really kind of managed the game on offense. Dak made the throws that he needed to throw, and the Cowboys ended up getting an easy win.
I think it all really comes down to the player that we have all been talking about all year. It was Zeke. Zeke didn't have really any big explosive plays. Like you said, he does feel like he's lost a step with the speed, even though he shouldn't have. He's a sophomore player, second year. But what he's really done is he has managed to make it so he gets about 5-6 yards a carry.
Yep.
And if you can do that, you're golden, because they know that every time you get that ball, you're going to get 5 or 6 yards a carry. You don't need to break a 20. You don't need to break a 30. You get that solid average every time. It opens up the playbook in second and third down where it's manageable. What do they always talk about? If you can get manageable second and third downs, you're going to be good.
Well, and you saw Beasley really, coming back after the concussion protocol, he is a huge piece of this offense. He's a huge piece that they were missing. They hadn't really used him all year, and you got to see him in the game Sunday, and he was awesome. 2 touchdowns. He is that outlet that used to be Jason Witten.
Yes.
And Jason Witten, as he's gone in the years, look, he can still be that outlet, but he's not nearly as consistent as he was.
But let's be honest, he was Tony Romo's outlet. If Tony Romo was still throwing the ball in this team, Jason Witten would be getting 10 catches a game. This new outlet is Cole Beasley, and Cole Beasley outlet for Dak, not for Tony Romo. Now, we all know Tony Romo wishes he was still playing, and that was obviously apparent when he went after Deion Sanders.
Yeah, it was really interesting just hearing him on the air calling the Cowboys game. It was kind of like listening to Troy Aikman, who is usually the guy who calls the Cowboys games. But they did this huge Tony Romo pregame celebration. They had number 9 all over the stadium, and Tony Romo's the best in the world. And look, it was so ridiculous, over the top what they did for Tony. And Tony Romo was a great player for this Cowboys team. We didn't win a Super Bowl with Tony Romo.
And we only won, one playoff game?
I do not remember them doing this for Troy Aikman. And Troy Aikman was the best quarterback, who I might get arguments on this, that the Cowboys have ever had.
Let's be honest, it's Staubach, Aikman, Romo. But when it comes to on-field stats, Romo blows them all away.
Yeah.
But when it comes to what they did on the team, he's third or fourth.
To wins.
He's tied up there with Meredith.
Yeah.
When it comes to the amount of impact he had in the offseason. Because let's be honest, this is not the NBA.
Yeah.
What happens in the regular season does matter, but
it's
all that doesn't matter at all if you can't do anything in the offseason.
In the postseason.
The postseason. If you can't create W's in the postseason, it doesn't matter. And we've seen multiple times throughout Tony's career, before the end, he was known for throwing those late game picks. Remember, he ever since he fumbled that field goal against Seattle, his career sort of went along that path, which was all the biggest of situations.
Yeah, and it's funny because you look back stat-wise, yes, he has the biggest stats in Cowboys history. He has incredible fourth-quarter stats. He has incredible when the Cowboys are losing stats in the fourth quarter, and how many games that he was able to win in the fourth quarter. But you think about all that, and then you go and look, and they were 2-4 when he was the quarterback of this team.
The sad part is they only had 4 chances. He was here for almost a decade.
6 chances.
6 chances.
2-4.
So 2 and 4.
Correct.
That's a horrible record.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people wrongfully do is they go, well, he's sort of like Brett Favre without the Super Bowl. Wrong. Yeah. Brett Favre had an amazing postseason record. He just lost a bunch of times in the NFC Championship games to teams that went to the Super Bowl.
But he went to the NFC Championship game, which Romo did not go to.
No. And I remember Brett Favre beat him when he was part of the Minnesota Vikings. So we just need to be careful. The Cowboys are very extravagant when it comes to celebrating people, especially now that Jerry Jones is in his later years. He's willing to just celebrate whoever's
been under him during this time period.
And it's sad because, let's be honest, DeMarcus Ware is a way better player than Tony Romo was, and no one did anything for him anywhere close to what this was. But with that said, let's go back to the game. It was a close game in the first quarter.
Yeah, it was close in the first half, and most of that was only because of the touchdown that the Chiefs got late. Tyreek Hill, 52-yard touchdown reception.
No one's seen anything like that before.
10 yards down the field, he catches the ball. He's got 2 tight ends blocking for him.
The whole defense was standing on the 10 for the Cowboys.
They did nothing.
They just stood there.
There was almost zero effort to try and make the tackle. It was almost a walk-in. He barely got touched. If it hadn't have been for like the fingertips of one of the linebackers at the goal line, he would have been untouched in the end zone. That's unacceptable, and the Cowboys, they'll figure out a way to combat that. But the NFL is going to look at, I mean, there's got to be a lot of teams thinking, whoa, that's a play that could seriously hurt us when the other team has a speedster like Tyreek Hill.
And the Chiefs continued that scoring right after the half. They had a long drive, which led to a Kelsey touchdown.
Yeah.
Then
we thought, wow, okay, the Chiefs are taking over this game. That touchdown of the half gave the momentum. Now they've driven the whole field, a nice long drive. They get that touchdown reception to Kelsey. They've got this Cowboys defense where they want them, but the Cowboys just turned around and had their own long drives.
And it was the defense for the Cowboys that really came up with 2 huge stops on long drives to prevent the Chiefs from scoring. And that really was confusing. It's either the Chiefs' offense has just completely collapsed or the Cowboys' defense has gotten better. I don't know which one it is because every time, Dallas, let's be honest, Dallas sports, they entice us, and then you get all worked up and then they just completely
Well, I think having David Irving back, and you saw Taco Charlton got a sack. Whoa.
Yeah.
He showed up, he did his taco dance or whatever, taco stand routine. Which
and then Smith is actually playing pretty well.
We've only seen once because he can't play well.
Yeah, Jalen Smith is playing well.
The whole
Lee's
defense.
Playing
this
well.
is the defense.
The human eraser, Sean Lee.
Exactly. This is the defense we thought we would see at the beginning of the season before all the injuries. We're starting to see it come together now, and I think it's a lot better than we expected at the beginning of the season. But
can they hold on to it?
Can they hold on to this? And, you know, there's a lot of guys that have had injuries who have been suspended for PED, suspended for other reasons. It's hard to accept that this defense can stay together for the rest of the season. If they do, I think it's a good defense. Not a great defense, but if they're a middle-of-the-road defense, they're going to look a lot better if the Cowboys can continue running the ball.
Now
That's where the problem comes in.
The Cowboys now have a completely different issue. It's not the defense right now, it's the offense. Tyron Smith now has a massive groin injury. He had to go have an MRI.
Massive groin injury.
Yeah, massive.
Oh, okay.
And he went and had an MRI done. He might be out for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Dak Prescott has a high ankle sprain, which people were seeing him walking around normally after the game. That's not when high ankle sprains hurt.
Yeah.
It's when you make an explosive move.
Des Bryant had a high ankle sprain.
And a shoulder. I mean, this team is starting to get decimated on offense. Now.
And Zeke might be out.
Yeah. Is it just me, or does this feel like a more dramatic Brett Favre retirement, out of retirement, out of retirement in a shorter period of time?
It's unbelievable. I mean, literally, we're going week to week on this, and none of us can now say that he's not going to play this week because
we have no idea.
Nobody knows.
Nobody. If you go talk to a lot of Cowboys fans, as much as they love Zeke, they go just take the
suspension.
The suspension. Take the 6 games. They're tired of the ups and downs and the getting excited down. And the problem is that even though he did a good job, it did affect the game.
Yeah.
Dak got hit a lot more than he should have because Zeke missed Thursday practices, which is the third down practice.
Yeah.
He didn't do well on blitz pickup. He did all this because he missed those practices. So even though it maybe doesn't affect his running ability on the field, it's affecting the game.
As good as Zeke was running the ball, one of my concerns was that we didn't get Alfred Morris nearly as many touches as I would have liked. It would have been nice to see him get more touches so that we have confidence in another running back going into this week in case Zeke is out. And that was the one thing out of this game, especially when you're up by 11 late. Put Alfred Morris in there. Why is Zeke in there still running the ball?
Because I would run
reason.
him. If he's going to have 6 games, I want to put as many touches into that guy's hands as possible. He's going to have a 6-week break at some point.
I guess what you would say is, well, Alfred Morris has been a stud back in this league. He knows what he's doing. He doesn't need the
real question is McFadden.
You still got to run off the rust. And McFadden, what I've heard is that
they're saving him.
They're saving him, and because if something happens with Alfred Morris, if Zeke's out.
Yeah.
Well, no, if Zeke sits for 6 games, which who knows.
They're going to have to do both of those backs.
Yes, Darren McFadden would have to step in if something happens with Alfred Morris. And so they've been saving him, hoping that once this thing happens with Zeke, Alfred Morris comes in and Darren McFadden can be the backup. I think Rod Smith's a good running back, but I think he's a specialty running back. He is not an every down running back, and if Alfred Morris gets hurt, we're going to need McFadden out.
Before we go back, before we move on and look at the rest of the NFL, let's be honest. The Cowboys need to win out the rest of their games to be playoff contenders. They have 2 major roadblocks leading up to that, and they both go through Philly.
Yes.
Philadelphia, they haven't played the Cowboys at all. They play at Philly, and they play at home. I don't know. This Philly defense and offense is crazy. They are probably the most explosive and balanced team.
The Cowboys are going to be playing this weekend. Philadelphia's got their bye, and then they play each other the next week. So Philadelphia's got 2 weeks to prepare for Dallas. And they're coming to play in Dallas. So that's a huge advantage for them. They have a road game against a team that they need to beat once. Just once. Dallas has to beat them twice. Philadelphia only has to beat us once to make sure that they get that top spot. So they have 2 weeks to prepare. They come in here.
And they have 2 shots to win.
And they've got 2 shots. I think it's a huge advantage for them. I think that's going to be difficult for the Cowboys to overcome. I think Philadelphia comes in here and wins, and then, at the end of the season, that last game against Philadelphia, it's not going to matter. I think Philadelphia, they're going to be 13-2 probably by the time they come in to play the Cowboys the second time.
And let's compare the teams, right? Real quick, let's compare the teams. So they've got, Philly obviously has the defense over ours. The offensive line probably we have a better offensive line than them, but it's negotiable.
It's close right now. If Tyron Smith is out that next week against Philadelphia, then
it's done. The running back, we have the Cowboys definitely with Zeke have a better one-man running team. Yes. But with Blunt and Ajayi,
and
Smallwood, Eagles, and if Sproles come back in time, they've got a way better running game than we do. It really comes down to quarterback.
Certainly, if Zeke's out, that's definitely goes
But
their
then it
way.
comes down to quarterback.
Yeah, and Wentz now is the better quarterback.
Yeah, it's not even close. He's more of but Wentz is more of a franchise deal-changing quarterback. Dak is just an awesome franchise quarterback. He's able to win the games when you need to win them, but he's more of a manager. Has he really wowed you all season long?
So he had a very high QBR yesterday, and he
doesn't take
phenomenal.
a lot of chances. He's very accurate.
But 6 of 10 down the field, 6 of 10 outside of 10 yards. Now, most of those were between 10 and 20 yards.
And then they were only yards after the catch.
There were only 2 passes that actually went past 20 yards. Both of them completed. But that means that he's not taking a chance downfield. He's finding wide open receivers. But that has not been the case year long. No, he has thrown downfield and incompleted most of them. I just think we'll see more and more of him throwing downfield now. He completed 6 out of 10. That's good numbers downfield for most quarterbacks.
But what's 60%. Downfield? 10, 15 yards?
Outside of 10 yards. He was 2 for 2 outside of 20 yards.
Well, let's be honest. 10 to 20 yards is his forte. He likes being able to pass in that. That's medium passes. Those aren't long.
But they're still throwing most of the passes underneath. 13 out of 17 under 10 yards. A lot of those are swing passes or short slants by wide receivers or outs. A lot of that is Beasley being back and taking advantage of him and his skill set, which is that under 10 yards. So I think you're seeing him take advantage of what defenses are giving them in that underneath area.
Well, why wouldn't he? He has Beasley. And he has Witten.
And most of that defense is short because they're guarding against the run. So they're going to have to take some chances downfield as the season goes by. I just don't know. Do they have the confidence in them to do it? I'm not sure.
I don't even think it's a confidence in a short period of time for like a game or two. The problem is it's just like practice. If you're not used to throwing the ball down the field in games, and all of a sudden they go, hey, we're going to start throwing the ball down the field, you second guess yourself. I haven't done this all year. I'm going to throw it, but he doesn't have that Aaron Rodgers, Carson Wentz, Carson Palmer, Tom Brady throwing down the ball.
We'll see as the year goes on. He's still a young quarterback.
As much as I give Dak trouble, he is probably one of the most poised quarterbacks in the league. He doesn't get ruffled. I mean, he deals with Zeke Elliott and Des Bryant on a daily basis.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, and he's able to withstand it. I just get nervous that there was a reason why he dropped to the 4th round. It wasn't because he didn't have the mindset and the maturity to play the game and he wasn't smart. He is not the most accurate guy down the field, and in the NFL, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and Des Bryant hasn't been able to take advantage of any 50-50 balls. There's a problem there. I don't think Des Bryant works well with Dak. Des Bryant works great with Tony.
Because Tony had pinpoint accuracy.
I don't think he works as well with Dak, and we'll see what happens after this year. I think it's going to be interesting. Are they going to try and re-sign Dez? Are they going to let him go? I think that's really interesting. Next, we'll get to the rest of the NFL and the review of the weekend, and we have Monday Night Football review as well. We'll get to college football, and then we have a little bit of NBA to finish off. Next.
We're so excited to invite you to our Stacey Furniture anniversary sale.
Save today on Stacey's outstanding selection, up to 50% off select items throughout the store.
Now's the time to buy that new bedroom, living room, or dining room suit. You can't beat these prices anywhere.
Name brands like Bernhard, Hooker, Universal, and Cheryl, all on sale today.
It's Stacey's anniversary sale, only happens once a year.
Shop Stacey's today or visit us online at staceyfurniture.com.
Remember, when you're shopping at Stacey's, you're shopping with family.
And we're back. We are going to be talking NFL, the rest of the NFL. It was a very exciting weekend. Wasn't as exciting as college football, but it was a very exciting weekend for the NFL. We've talked about this numerous times over this season. They've been very inconsistent. I don't know if it's matchups that the NFL has put together in whatever calculation or equation that they're using to put these matchups together.
There's a lot of analytics involved.
Yeah, but it has been inconsistent when it comes to good weekends and bad.
Yeah, and I think it was a good weekend. It wasn't a great weekend for them. I think college football clearly outdid the NFL this weekend.
It was crazy.
It was only because the matchups in college football this weekend, and I think for the next couple of weekends, are going to be pretty crazy. And just all of the wild stuff that's happened in college football in the last couple of weekends.
But we'll be talking about that next. But right now, we're gonna start with Redskins versus Seahawks.
Yeah, and obviously just because the Redskins are in the NFC East, we got to talk about them. We were looking, can we get a game up on the Redskins? Because we're desperately trying to separate ourselves from the Redskins because we have, a game coming up with them still. So we've got to get a win there. If we lost there and we had gained a game, at this point, we'd feel a lot safer because we've got to win against them already. But now they're only a game back of us still. They came back and snuck up on the Seahawks, which is a good team.
But the Seahawks dominated time of possession, dominated yards per attempt, whether it was a rushing game or the passing game. They dominated on defense. They dominated on special teams. I just don't know what happened. And what this is doing now, it is making it apparent and obvious that Kirk Cousins needs to be paid starter money. He needs to get signed to a long-term contract because the fact that he was able to drive down the field on one of the best defenses in the NFL.
Yes.
In 35 seconds, he was able to go down the field and score when they needed it. You can't get much better than that.
I know, and I think a lot of people are turning towards the fact that he is one of the better quarterbacks, up-and-coming quarterbacks in the league, and that he should get paid. I think he's going to get paid. I think he'll stay with the Redskins.
He likes the coach. He likes the offensive coordinator.
If they were going to trade him, they would have done it by now because there are plenty of teams that were desperate for a starting quarterback, and they could have gotten several picks, 2 or 3 picks probably for him, but they haven't, and they haven't given up on him. I think this is what they're looking to see from him, and I think they realize this is the guy they want going forward. They've got to build around him. They just don't have enough pieces. If they could bring in a running back who's going to be a solid runner for him, an Ezekiel Elliott type of running back, that would significantly help their offense. Health on their offensive line has been a problem. I don't know if they need to continue drafting
Russell's
there
looked good, though.
Or just get guys healthy. But their defense has got to step up. It's a very good defense. If you look at the Redskins' defense and the depth that they have, it's a good defense. They just haven't been stepping up and making plays. Now that the offense is stepping up and making plays, I think the Redskins are going to be okay.
Yes.
But this year, I don't know. Can they catch the Cowboys? I think it's going to be tough. Cowboys without Zeke, that's going to make it a little bit easier. But the Redskins are looking forward to that game against the Cowboys. They need a win.
So we just looked at the team that is trailing the Cowboys. Let's look at the team we talked about in the previous segment. The Eagles, who are ahead of the Cowboys, they went and played what was considered the best defense in the league in Denver and annihilated.
And I mean, it's just incredible what they're doing to defenses right now. It's just everybody. It's week in, week out. They're going out there and putting up massive amounts of points, massive amounts of yards. They can do it in all ways. And then they add Jay Ajayi, who could be a top 7 running back in the league. Could be a top 5 running back in the league. Just amazing that they were able to get him, and now they are, to me, a lock for the NFC East. They are the best team in the NFC, and
they might win the Super Bowl.
They're the best team in the NFL right now.
The Eagles have the complete opposite situation that the Cowboys do. The Cowboys have an amazing running back and a good quarterback right now, which is making it easier for the quarterback to be able to throw down the field, which he isn't doing. But it opens up the throwing game. Yes. The Eagles have probably right now one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Well, if you take in the injuries that have happened, he probably is the best quarterback in the league.
And so what has happened is he's throwing. Yeah, he's one of the best.
Brady.
Yeah, he's one of the best downfield throwers in the league. He's more athletic than people feel. He's probably a Andrew Luck light in a lot of ways. Yeah. He doesn't have the size that Andrew Luck does, but he does have the creativity in the pocket. He does have the creativity when it comes to being able to adjust to make a throw. And what that does is it opens up to have an average run game look awesome because they have to back up to defend these wide receivers that are going crazy on people. And now Blunt and Ajayi are now able to have big games. Ajayi had a huge game with only 8 carries.
Yeah, a touchdown. One of those was a huge, I think it was like 40 yards. But still, they did not plan for him to get very many carries in this game. He didn't. But you can see what he does just on a few carries. The guy's extremely explosive. He's the opposite of Blunt. They're a perfect match together. Very similar to what LeGarrette Blunt ran in New England with the Patriots. He came in, he did the hard work, inside the red zone. When they need 3rd and 1, LeGarrette Blunt's out there. But Jay Ajayi is extremely explosive. He was a monster pickup. I think the best pickup of the free agency period that inside that trade window.
Yeah, and then we go down and look at Patriots. Patriots versus Falcons. It was the trading deadline.
Trade deadline. Yeah.
Panthers versus Falcons. As big of a win as this was for the Panthers to be able to keep pace with the Saints, I think this is an even bigger deal for the Falcons because the Falcons have just fallen
off a cliff. Yes.
But you know what? This is not unheard of. How many times have you heard of the post-Super Bowl slump? Yeah. They go and it's a team that maybe hasn't been there before, and the year after, they just fall apart.
Well, if you remember, they've done this now. This is kind of back-to-back of this, go to the playoffs, play really well, and then the next year not make the playoffs. They did it 2 years ago. They did not make the playoffs after having made the playoffs and looking like a totally opposite team, very similar to what's happened now. They go to the Super Bowl, and now they look terrible. And I don't know how to explain it. It's the same team. But there's nothing that's changed.
But we saw this again with the team that they played. The Panthers looked awesome, and they went into the Super Bowl as close to being a favorite to win that game as you've seen in a very long time, with Cam Newton throwing the ball and running the ball like crazy. They had
Jonathan Stewart,
looking like Williams. A monster. And then the next year they won 4 games.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. Something about the NFC.
It's the runner-ups. It's the runner-ups that just fall apart the next year.
Patriots are the only team that can seem to pull it out every year.
The Rams, the Cowboys in the 90s, all these, the Steelers, all these teams that won the Super Bowl. It's not winning the Super Bowl, which is the part where you fall apart, apparently. It's when you are the runner-up. Yeah. It's like all your confidence is shot.
So are you saying the Buffalo Bills of the early 90s are the greatest team of all time?
I think they could be considered as one of the top.
Because they were able to go
4 times.
Yeah, and lose Every single time.
So
That's incredible.
So let's talk about that for a minute. So what happens when you lose? You get angry.
Yeah.
And when you get angry, what do? You do
fight or flight.
Fight or flight. Well, AJ Green and Mike Evans both decided to fight.
And both teams have really struggled this year.
Yes.
And you can see the frustration boiling over from those two wide receivers, who are two of the best wide receivers in the league, playing on teams that cannot win. And wide receivers are known, when things go bad for your team,
they go nuts.
They go nuts.
So what is going on right now is, the catch rule. And how it's the most confusing thing in the world. Now, apparently, the suspension rule is as confusing because Mike Evans went over and he did sideswipe a guy, but it was an illegal hit, but it was a hit.
Yeah.
Some guy touched his quarterback. You played football. What do they say to you? If someone touches your quarterback, what do you do?
Him.
You go and you get ready to fight. So he went and did that. He leveled a guy that touched his quarterback. AJ Green was just dealing with a corner who was getting in his head. He grabbed him by the throat, flipped him backwards, and started punching him.
Yes. Anytime your fist makes contact with a player on your team, opposite team, referee,
you're gone.
Doesn't matter. You're gone, and you should be suspended for at least a game, if not 2 games.
And he didn't.
How did he not get suspended?
And if you watch, he throws 4 or 5 punches. You remember the first time he goes down, and then he stands over and punches him. He gets knocked down, and you just see him swinging on the inside.
As far as I could tell, there was no reason for Ramsey to get ejected.
No, he just
maybe penalized.
Oh, he touched him like that.
Yeah, just shoved him.
A little shove. Wasn't even a big shove.
But it doesn't matter. Shove is a shove. Maybe they give him a penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct.
It should have been a penalty.
But not an ejection and not a suspension, which he did not get the suspension. But how can you say that that is equal to what A.J. Green did?
Right now, the NFL is in a lot of trouble. Honestly, all that political crap.
Conduct stuff, just conduct in general by players, they are not consistent.
It's not that. It's
we don't
also
know what's
rules.
going on.
They're since Goodell has taken over, he's done a great job of building revenue. He's a great business person. But the problem is the rules are starting to change and it's having a massive effect on the game. They've made it so that wide receivers can't get touched. That running backs basically have a free will. If you touch a quarterback anywhere in the pocket, man, it's a penalty. And so what it is doing is it's making an unfair advantage to the offensive side, which you can obviously see. Then you make it where defensive players cannot really make contact in shoulders or above, and you make it so that the wide receivers are so protected that now they're encouraging defensive players to go at the knees or lower.
Yeah.
Which, I'm sorry, I would rather have a concussion than have my ACL torn. Wouldn't you?
Well, prefer not to have it either.
But if you had a choice between getting a concussion, maybe not a season ending, but just a concussion, or getting your ACL and leg annihilated.
Yeah, I might go for the concussion, but that's me at 35 asking for a concussion. Those guys at 20s asking for a concussion, not 20, 30 years down the line when that concussion comes back to haunt you. But let's look at Sunday night football. The Raiders got a really crucial win. They needed that win. The Dolphins were terrible. They got Jay Cutler back, and he was huge. He was huge for them, but they still can't run the ball. Why did they trade J.H.I.A.? It didn't make any sense unless they've decided this season's over for them.
J.H.I.A. was doing things off the field that was pissing off the coach, and the coach was sort of, in a lot of ways, losing the locker room.
Yes. So
he had to put his foot down. And what do? You take one of the best assets you have and make an example out of him, and that's what he did. But Raiders,
it's really not working out for him.
No,
though,
it's
unfortunately.
not. The Raiders are now trying to make a push because the entire AFC West is falling apart.
Yes.
Broncos are just falling off. Chiefs are falling off.
And they've lost 3 out of 4.
And if Raiders can start inching their way back up, they have a shot to take over that.
The only reason that they were losing games early was with Derek Carr's injury.
Yes.
Now that he's back.
And getting his confidence back. The first couple, once you come back from injury, you've done it.
I totally agree.
You're a little bit tentative.
You could even see to this game, he still threw well, but he was a little bit tentative to throw the ball down the field. So I think we'll see more of that as they go, and it's a great defense. They're still a very good defense.
And Marshawn Lynch was the Marshawn Lynch that we all thought. Didn't get a million carries, but man, when he got him, he made it physical. He scored 2 red zone touchdowns, and he made the game close so that Derek Carr could finish it.
Yes. And that's what they need, and that's what this team can do. And they can go out and play defense against any of the best offenses in the AFC. I think they'll be fine. I think they've got a shot at winning that division still, especially the way Kansas City and Denver are playing right now.
And it doesn't hurt that they played Miami.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt. It's a good win game.
Their schedule's
it's soul food, right?
For
it's not the best food for you, but it's soul food. It makes you feel good for yourself.
But if you think about coming down to the end of the season, they're going to get games against in-division rivals when they're playing at their best, and
they're
those
playing
teams
at their
the worst.
So then we go, without Ajayi, the Dolphins could not convert in the red zone at all.
Yeah, they seem to be able to run the ball a little bit, but not nearly what they can do.
And the Dolphins don't have the staff at wide receiver and tight end to be able to be red zone targets. They don't have a Mike Evans or a Jimmy Graham or some guy who's 6'4" who you can throw the ball up.
He's done that under certain quarterbacks, but he hasn't turned out really with
You have to have an unbelievably accurate quarterback for him to be effective. The last time he was really good was when they had was halfway through the career, what is his name that got hurt?
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank as well. The quarterback who got injured at the beginning of the season. The previous quarterback.
Yes. He was an accurate quarterback, just like Dak, in the medium range throws, and that's usually what you have when you're in the red zone.
was very capable with him. He hasn't really shown up with Cutler. I think the Dolphins can throw the ball down the field, but like we were saying in this game, they can't convert in the red zone because they have no running game. Mm-hmm. Having no running game is going to kill them going the rest of the season. I think the team's done. They had a great start. They're 4-4. I don't know how many more wins they get the rest of the season.
And then we go on to Monday night, and Monday night was horrible.
Yes. For you.
For me, it was
great
horrible.
Great for me. Great for this guy. Detroit Lions with the W.
If you do that too much more, I'm going to think you're David Pumpkins.
This guy, David Pumpkins.
But the Lions took it to the Packers.
Yeah.
The Packers who can't run the ball.
We knew this was going to happen, though.
But you know what? I have never seen, outside of maybe Brett Favre, I have never seen a quarterback who could fill out and make sure that so many mistakes were hidden.
Yeah.
And so many weaknesses. He was so good. Just like Brett, he was so good that he masked so many problems.
Well, he masked the fact that they have zero running game, and they still have zero running. They can't run the ball at all. How can they not run the ball?
But what I don't get is why aren't they running Aaron Ripkowski? Last year, Aaron Ripkowski in about 4 games ran for 300 yards and had 2 or 3 touchdowns. He's a power runner.
Oh, you're talking about the Green Bay Packers?
Yes, the fullback. Why can't they do that? Why can't they go, okay, these guys we have right now are not making it. The reason why is because they're not big enough to run up the middle. Feed it to the fullback and then get it out wide. And then if you have to, you bring in a guy that you have two. You can bring out the
call Mike Montgomery and talk to him because it's not working up there. Brett Hundley is not the quarterback. I'm sorry, he's just not.
Even though Shereen Williams loves him,
I don't see enough from him that tells me this guy is going to be.
So he's not a Jimmy Garoppolo,
a starting quarterback in this league. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is a starting quarterback in this league. I don't know who thinks he.
Apparently, the 49ers.
The 49ers believe that. Jacoby Brissett. He seems to be just enough for the Colts, but it's one of those like he's getting them through until when they get luck back.
You know who he reminds me of? Buffalo's quarterback.
Tyrod Taylor. Yeah, but he's taller and
Jimmy Brissett?
He's not as skilled. He doesn't throw as great of a ball as Taylor does.
But his skill sets remind me of Taylor. Big
I don't
arm,
think it's the same.
run. I'm not saying
he doesn't run very well. He's not a great runner.
So he's Byron Leftwich.
He does remind me quite a bit of Leftwich. He's not bad once he gets out.
Oh my God! But when you see Byron Leftwich run in the open field, he makes a juke. I'm like, don't tear your ACL.
Exactly. And Jacoby Brissett definitely reminds me of him.
But the Lions put it to the Packers, and so what happens is Matthew Stafford,
baby, Matthew Stafford, money man. It was unbelievable.
Money man against the defense for the Packers who were horrible.
Yeah, you keep bragging about how good that defense is, but
Golden Tate had 7
catches.
7 catches for over 100 yards.
Both him and Marvin Jones had 7 for over 100. Marvin Jones got both of the touchdowns, but both of them were doing work against that Green Bay secondary. Matthew Stafford was just killing it, though.
Didn't he have a quarterback rating of 93.4?
Yeah,
or 92.4.
Yes, which is, if you get over 90, you're doing extremely well in the NFL. And
why are you smiling so big right now?
I'm so excited the Packers lost. And my team that I predicted to win the NFC North.
But see, I'm going through the steps, right? I'm at acceptance. I understand the Packers are horrible. What I don't understand is why aren't they making changes? That's the problem. It's like the Packers decided, we're out Rodgers, but we're going to continue on the same thing. Yeah. You don't do that. You go, okay, we need more of a running. We need to lean more on the running game. Okay, our running backs are not doing great right now. Let's see who can run the ball. That means in the next 2 games, you feed the ball. You give at least every single running back on that team at least 10 carries to see what they do.
Part of the problem was they came out, they tried to run the ball, they couldn't run the ball, and then by the time they decided, we need to spread out the carries, they were already down so much that they had to throw the ball to get back in the game. And Hundley he's not nearly good enough to try and move them down the field.
So you don't think McCarthy is as confident with him as he was when Aaron went down?
Not even
Do you remember that? This is our quarterback. We're going to keep this quarterback. The problem is
when
now,
he said that, I thought he was joking.
The problem is now is that there's going to be a huge push by people that, the same people who are protesting for Colin Kaepernick to get signed by the Packers. There's going to be a huge push.
There is for the Texans have said they've talked about Colin. Well, we've talked about him. We talked about every quarterback that's available. Well, they mentioned his name. Now everybody thinks the Texans are going to sign Colin Kaepernick. I mean, there is
no one's going to hire him in
that has any sort of quarterback injury. There's going to be talk about that,
and no one's going to bring him in because all that's going to be is a circus, and they don't want that circus. And speaking of circuses, NCAA football was a madhouse this weekend. Straight up bedlam, and we will be talking about that next.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
We've got college football. As you said, bedlam. Bedlam happened this weekend.
That probably was the most exciting game of the year.
It's incredible. And Oklahoma winning, both of those teams' defenses just decided not to show up. It's really
It's either that or the quarterbacks were that good. I'm going with the quarterbacks were that good.
Well, the quarterbacks are both very good, and I think they're both probably at least top 2 round picks, if not first round picks. Just the way Baker Mayfield has started separating himself from the Sam Darnolds, and Lamar Jackson, and all the guys that we already talked about at the beginning of the season as guys who would be first round picks. Those guys have not come through this year, and he's been the guy that has.
Let's break it down. Oklahoma State and Oklahoma almost had 1,000 passing yards between them.
At halftime.
At halftime.
No, that's total yards. Total yards.
Yeah.
At halftime. Passing yards, yes. 1,000
at the end of the game. Yeah, that's insane.
Almost 2,000 yards of offense in this game. That is just an unbelievable
Have you ever heard of that?
No, and I was surprised because I was thinking, wow, it's just going to get worse in the second half, but the defense has actually showed up a little bit in the second half.
Oklahoma had some stops that they needed to have, which is crazy because the amount of points scored, you would no one stopped anybody in this game.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State got stopped 2, 3, 4 times in the second half.
Well, it was 38-38 at half. There had to have been a few stops in the second half. Otherwise, it would have been 80-80 at the end of the game, which would have been the most insane score ever. But yes, these defenses decide to show up in the second half. Oklahoma got the stops they needed. Oklahoma State didn't.
I'm sorry. There was one other problem in Bedlam that accompanied Bedlam, that made it Bedlam, was the fact that Oklahoma walked into a game that when the whistle blew, they weren't just playing Oklahoma State, they were playing the refs. These refs made such horrible calls. That targeting call, did you see it? That targeting call was BS. The ball was hit. The wide receiver caught the ball. It ricocheted, went up in the air. The safety came in. The wide receiver ducked. The safety saw it, tried to evade, and the side of his helmet ricocheted a little. a little off the head of the,
Mr. Homer.
No.
Oklahoma Sooner here.
Hey, when Oklahoma was doing bad, who was the first one to jump on him?
I saw it, and
it was not targeting.
Helmet to helmet.
But it was not targeting.
I don't know about targeting, but it was certainly helmet to helmet.
So what they did is they threw him out of the ball, and then they gave the ball back to Ohio State or Oklahoma State. It was ridiculous. That had nothing to do with it. The ball was in the air a second before he got hit.
They came back, and the referees watched the video, and they made a determination that is against what you just said. So
well, then they don't know what to talk about.
Mr. Homer Sooner, yeah. So now that Green Bay's done for the season, you're going double down on Oklahoma.
All I know is that they're number 5, and they could be number 4 this week. And I think that may happen. That was a pretty decisive win.
Well, and certainly the Big Ten has started to eat themselves up, and that's not hurting Oklahoma's chances again.
Yeah, because Michigan State walks into Penn State, ended their season.
Yeah.
Ended it. It's like Urban Meyer were still there. They played so well.
Yeah, and it's really, Michigan State can win the Big Ten. If they win the Big Ten, a lot of people think they could get in, but I think that would be a question, Oklahoma or Michigan State.
And the problem is, Penn State has lost 2 in a row.
Yeah, Penn State's done.
They didn't just lose 2, they lost 2 in a row. And if they had lost a game early in the season and maybe another one late in the season to 2 really good teams, there could have been a chance they were still in the hunt.
Yeah.
But since losing 2 in a row, I'm sorry, that's a death nail.
No, and they have no chance of winning the Big Ten, which is also a death nail for them. It's going to be Michigan State versus Wisconsin, the championship game. That's my expectation. If things change, I wouldn't be surprised because this whole season's been nuts. But
especially the Big Ten.
Wisconsin wins that game, they're in the top 4. They're undefeated in the top 4.
And then you walk into Ohio State loses to Iowa.
Yeah, another bizarro game. And Iowa has played well against everybody this year, and Iowa always plays up to the competition. Mm-hmm. Ohio State this year, in my opinion, has played down to the competition, so it's not a gigantic surprise. But you would think Ohio State would go in there knowing we have to win out to get into the playoff.
And I'm sorry, but Barrett, their quarterback, he is not a good quarterback. He reminds me a lot of a less talented Cam Newton when it comes to up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down.
You know who he reminds me of? Terrell Pryor.
Yes.
Who is now a wide receiver in the NFL. Barrett probably will be a wide receiver in the NFL. End. Well, Terrell Pryor is the same size as Barrett.
He's a lot faster. Barrett is not the fastest guy in the world.
I think Barrett could come in and play a wide receiver. I don't know about tight end, but I think some inside.
But here's the problem.
Position.
You have Ohio State. You have I'm tired of, and you see it all the time, and we've had our expert guys, right, that have said that just they automatically size up. You know, Ohio State, they have Urban Meyer. They're a lock. They're done. Penn State, oh my gosh. Oh, they're a lock. And the second they go down, oh, I told you all along that the Big Ten, oh my gosh. And I'm sitting there going, will we stop saying that these teams with these elite coaches can't make mistakes? They cannot lose a season. Just because the coach was great everywhere else, you have to look at the talent of the team. And Barrett has continuously lost big games when it mattered.
Yeah.
You remember they went in the playoffs a couple years ago, and he was supposed to win and he didn't. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah, I think, the Big Ten has been a bit of a mess the last few years. And
they're exciting. Don't get me wrong.
No,
they are exciting.
And they have a lot of good coaches and a lot of good teams, a lot of good talent. But they just keep eating each other up, and it's giving advantage to the ACC and the SEC.
Big 12.
Big 12, where there's more clarity about the top. And TCU proved it this weekend. They beat Texas. They punished Texas. That defense of TCU's is legit. And they aren't no, not I don't use the term lit. You can use that. I'm too old for that word. But you look at what TCU's defense has done all season. They are a legit team, and Oklahoma beating them would prove to me that Oklahoma is by far the best team in the Big 12 and deserves one of those top 4 spots.
I just think that we have gotten so used to, like I was saying before, everybody, and you've seen Shireen do it, defends the SEC like it is Jerusalem with a religion. It is the capital, it is the holy place and the holy division of the NCAA. And outside of Alabama and outside of Georgia, who is there?
No, and I think you're looking at 2 teams that are going to be in the college playoff.
Yes.
And
they're just lucky they haven't played each other so far.
When they get to a championship game, it's going to be Georgia versus Alabama.
Yes.
It doesn't matter who wins or who loses.
Nope, because they're both making it.
Both make it, and I expect that both will probably be the top 2 seeds. Because it'll be one playing against 2, and it's like, well, I can't drop number 2 because they lost to number 1 by 10 points. It would take a blowout, I think.
Yes.
An Alabama blowout of Georgia for Georgia to drop from 2 to 3 or 4. It's 3 and 4 are the spots up for grabs, and right now, for me, it's Wisconsin and it's Notre Dame. Miami, if they stay undefeated and win the ACC, they deserve one of those spots. And then there's Oklahoma. What do you do? It's going to be a real mess.
Because then there's Clemson. And Clemson and Notre Dame are the 2 teams that are going to make this a mess.
Yes.
Because Clemson gets a win this weekend against NC State, but just.
Yes.
They did just enough to win that game.
Yeah. And I don't know, are they good enough to beat Miami? Because Miami is rolling right now. And that game, Clemson against Miami, is going to be really interesting.
And then it's also Miami versus Notre Dame as well. Yeah. Notre Dame, top 5 team, definitely top 5 team. Now, where in that they are, who knows?
I think we're going to get a clearer picture after this weekend because that game, Notre Dame against Miami, is definitely one of those teams is going to move out of a chance at the college playoff positioning. Yes. Because you can't, if Miami loses to Notre Dame, Miami has a loss in the ACC where you have Clemson already with 1 loss. I don't think they can overcome that and then overcome a Oklahoma or a Notre Dame to get into those 3 or 4 positions. So I think whoever loses this game is going to be out.
You know, I don't foresee this bracket being finalized until the last week of the season.
Crazy.
Which is not the case, has not been the case back when
we've always had 4 or 5 undefeated teams, so it was like, okay, which undefeated team is not going to be in?
Now, you know, the 2 top undefeated teams, there is only going to be 1 undefeated team in the playoff.
Yeah.
And it's either going to be Georgia or it's going to be Alabama.
Yeah.
One of those 2. The rest will all have 1 loss.
And Miami, you would expect, will lose one of these games. Wisconsin probably will lose to Michigan State in the championship.
So let's just say Miami runs the table.
It's possible.
Let's say Miami runs the table.
Yeah.
Their record isn't good enough to be in the top 4.
Yeah.
They're just not. They don't play anybody.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that the top 4, the playoff will all have, all but 1 will be 1-loss teams.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
Because unless Notre Dame runs the table as well, they're not going to make it in.
Well, they're a 1-loss team already. Anyway.
Oh, they are. Yeah. They are a 1-loss team.
So it's really Miami and Wisconsin are the only 2 undefeateds who have a shot at the college. And the sad thing is, you got like a UCF team who's undefeated, and you have there's a couple other teams around the country that are undefeated that just don't even get a shot because they're not in a Power 5 conference. That sucks. That's going to dry up the talent in those non-Power 5 conferences. I think that's terrible for college football.
So I think we went a little long with our episodes today. So next will be Matt Wixon, and then we will see you tomorrow.
We're so excited to invite you to our Stacey Furniture anniversary sale.
Save today on Stacey's outstanding selection, up to 50% off select items throughout the store.
Now's the time to buy that new bedroom, living room, or dining room suit. You can't beat these prices anywhere.
Name brands like Bernhard, Hooker, Universal, and Sherrill, all on sale today.
It's Stacey's anniversary sale, only happens once a year.
Shop Stacey's today or visit us online at staceyfurniture.com.
Remember, when you're shopping at Stacey's, you're shopping with family.
We're back. We're here with Matt Wixon talking a little bit of FISD football. Matt, go over a little bit of what happened this weekend, and then we will go forward to see how that has effects on the playoff picture for FISD football.
Yeah, we have 1 week left in the regular season,
yes.
and the playoffs are still muddled.
Muddled?
Course. Well, you know, we know 2 teams. Frisco Lone Star is the district champion, and Frisco Reedy is second place. They played on Friday, and it played out the way I think we mostly thought it would. Reedy shows that it could be a competitive team. Again, I mean, it could be competitive against a really elite team, Lone Star, but it's not quite ready to beat Lone Star. Reedy's in his 2nd year as a varsity program, and Lone Star, I think, is a state championship contender. 63-35 was the final score. MJ Rivers, the quarterback for Lone Star.
This was ridiculous.
4 touchdowns running, 4 touchdowns passing, and I mean, he's 6'4", 213 pounds. And he can run over people. When you have a quarterback who can run over people, That makes him, obviously a threat running. But the big thing for him is that he has improved so much as a thrower this year. Threw some beautiful passes. A couple times he
has a good arm.
Has a good arm. He made late in the first half, made a beautiful fake to a little out pattern, and then threw a nice rainbow for a touchdown. It's the kind of big time pass you want to see.
I'm really impressed. I mean, we thought, Rick and I, and you talked about this, is that we thought the only way Reedy really had a chance was not to try to run it against that team, but to throw it.
Right.
I have no idea. I wasn't at the game, but was that sort of the way they went? They tried to beat them through the air, not on the ground?
Well, they tried to be balanced, which I mean,
you
they tried
to be smart.
Well, but I mean, I think they were smart. They tried to establish the run early, at least the threat of a run, and they got some nice runs early. But you're not going to get much against that Lone Star front. I mean, with
runs, no.
No, you are not, and they did not. And then that put more pressure on Josh Foskey, who's a really good quarterback, junior quarterback for Reedy. I think he's going to be a real big star next year, and he's already been a star this year. In fact, before this game, this will probably show you how this game kind of affected Reedy. He had not thrown an interception all year. I think he had thrown 18 touchdowns. He threw 2 against Lone Star. And I think part of that was this was the fiercest rush he's seen. I mean, the game was probably moving extremely fast for all of Reedy because Lone Star is just such an advanced team. They put a lot of pressure on him from the start. Reedy hung in there in the first half. I think it was 28-21 at one point. But when Lone Star's defense got 2 or 3 stops in a row early in the second half, and they could not stop Lone Star's offense. Lone Star scored, I believe, touchdowns on 8 of their first 9 drives. So it was just. It really
isn't fair when you have one team who's a big, powerful, dominating team in general, and then you have another team that is more like a Oregon. So if you want to look at the two matchups, and it's not to the degrees of Oregon versus Alabama, but it is a Alabama versus Oregon. Right. It's a power running team who runs first and has a hard-nosed defense. And you've got more of a finesse team who's better at throwing it, who maybe his defense is speedier and a little bit smaller. And what ends up happening a lot of times in those games is if the smaller, speedier team does not just have athletes that are just going to blow the top off of the slower, bigger team, that other team's just going to manhandle them. And
in some of those games where we've seen teams, if we're talking the college, kind of comparison, where teams hung with Alabama, it's because they have a quarterback who can throw, but he's kind of a manager.
Yes.
But in addition, Lone Star has those components, but then they have a quarterback who is not a manager.
No.
I mean, he is a star.
Yeah, because Alabama only has manager quarterbacks, let's be honest. They hand the ball off all the time, and no quarterback that wants to make it to the NFL and be a first-round draft pick goes to Alabama.
Right.
Because they know 50% of the time they're handing the ball off to a running back. So.
And Lone Star, I mean, they've got MJ Rivers, but then they've also got Kirby Bennett, who's a big-time running back recruit, who really didn't have to do that much in that game. He hurdled a defender in the open field, which got everybody to ooh and ah. But they have good receivers, they have good running backs, they have just tons of weapons. It really is a pick your poison type thing. Hey, we're going to try to take away the short pass. He'll burn you deep. We're going to try to take away the running back, zone read. Rivers will take it and run 10 yards, then run over somebody and run for another 10. It's really tough to stop them.
I look at it this way. So that was the matchup really for first and second place in the division.
Definitely.
For Frisco ISD. Where do the other teams lie, and how did they perform over this past weekend?
Well, the big one was, I think, Wakeland, who we thought at the start of the year was probably going to be the biggest challenger to Lone Star. Then they had, some slip-ups early in district, that monster overtime game against Centennial. Well, they came back, they beat Heritage 38-14 last week to basically put themselves in great position for the playoffs. And I think they have turned things around, and they're in good shape going into the playoffs. And so the scenarios this week, we always talk about the scenarios over the morning news, what they have to do to win. It's pretty crazy in that Wakeland plays Frisco this week. Frisco is winless, Frisco High. And so if they win, they get in. Centennial plays Heritage. If Centennial beats Heritage, Centennial's in. If Heritage beats Centennial, Heritage is in. Frisco Independent still has a chance, but I mean, if you want to call them a long shot, they have to beat Lone Star. And they need Wakeland to lose to Frisco.
Let's just say we're not going to count on that scenario.
It's a tough one. Yeah, it's a tough one for them. And then Wakeland can also get in without a win over Frisco if certain things happen. I believe it's if Heritage beats Centennial to keep Centennial out of a tiebreaker because Centennial beat Wakeland. So it's kind of a mess. But I think at this point we got Lone Star and Reedy, who will be the top 2 teams, and they are going Division II. For those people who don't know, They break 5A into the biggest schools in 5A into Division I, the smaller schools in Division II. Division II is generally a little less competitive, not always. Like we mentioned, I think last week, Aledo is in there, and Aledo is a monster. But those will be, Division II will be Lone Star and Reedy, and the other two teams who qualify, which looks like it'll be Wakeland and either Heritage or Centennial, will be Division I. It's going to be a tough draw. It will be tough.
So let's just consider this week coming up of games shoring up the Final Four, right? So, Lone Star just needs to do this. Well, regardless if they lose or not, if they win this, they're fine, they're ready. Basically, This is a prep weekend for the playoffs. Same with Reedy. It's a prep weekend for the playoffs. These other teams you mentioned, they're trying to get in, so these are shoring up games. These they have to win to be comfortably into the playoffs.
Right.
So now let's look at it past this next weekend.
Okay.
How do you see these, since the two teams are going to probably divide into Division 5B and Division 5A1, right? So 1 and 2. How do you see those two paths going for the teams that are generally everybody thinks are going to make the playoffs this year?
Right. Well, I think, we know that Frisco Reedy in the first round is going to play Lake Dallas, and I think that's going to be a really interesting game. I think Reedy can win that game, but Lake Dallas is a pretty good team.
Do they match up well?
They match up pretty well. Lake Dallas is not a big physical, I don't want to say that they're like a finesse team, but they are not a huge school. They're not a big overpowering school that's going to, have all kinds of depth and a line that's huge. No, it's not like Lone Star. So I think that'll be a really good game. You've got Reedy, which is going to be making their first playoff appearance, against Lake Dallas, which has made some playoff appearances. In fact, they went to the state semifinals a couple of years ago, but it's not a large school, and I think Reedy will match up well in that game. Definitely has a chance in that game. I do not know Lone Star's first round opponent yet, but Lone Star, I just like the way they can play any style. Take away whatever you want from their
run,
offense.
Beat them up,
and their defense is going to be pretty good against everything. I think their defense has some vulnerability to a good pass game, partly because I just watched Reedy do a pretty good job against them, with a good quarterback, Josh.
That's what we, last week we talked all about that. We thought that the one weakness that Lone Star has is they probably don't have as great defensive backs as they do front seven.
Yeah, their strength is definitely the front seven. And I don't think those defensive backs have been tested a heck of a lot because that front seven has covered up a lot of things.
And people don't realize you don't form swords without, beating on them a little bit. And if that's defensive backs haven't had to deal with a lot of long passes, tough throws, all that, it's really hard to get ready to play those kinds of games when you haven't played them all year.
Yeah.
So I think that you're right. I think that's going to be more of a weakness for them. Not saying that the defensive backs aren't good. They just haven't had
and that Reedy game was great for them.
Yes.
To have that, because those backs, in addition to some other things, defensive adjustments, they made adjustments at halftime, and they played much better in the second half, and they dominated the second half. So that bodes well for whoever they're playing in the playoffs. For the teams that go to Division I believe it'll be Wakeland. Heritage and Centennial seems like a toss-up game to me. Hard for me to judge. I think either one of them, though, is going to feel real good about making the playoffs. And then after that, it's icing. It's icing, whatever you can do. And it'll be an achievement that they've gotten there. It'll be tough because there's a lot of good teams in the Division I bracket. But you never know. Like Centennial's got a nice running attack. Heritage was hurt by their quarterback getting injured early in the year, but they've had some time to make adjustments. So I think they'll be competitive in the playoffs, but I think the best bets are Frisco Lone Star for sure. Reedy has a chance. And I think Wakeland, because of the way they're playing now, they've got a chance in the Division I.
So you think that there is a chance the first round of the playoffs that Frisco ISD schools will go 2-2?
That's a
Lone Star. No, this is just Lone Star's going to win, or at least we believe they're going to win.
Certainly be a big
Reedy
favorite.
has a chance, so that's 2 wins, and we do think that Reedy. The other two's going into Division 5-1A, so the top.
Division I, yep.
They're going to struggle. And
more likely.
And we're not counting the fact that they got in there. Those are big dogs up there.
Yes.
It is hard. If these schools
and they're going against because they're 13-5A. That's their district. They play 14-5A, which is a good district. Like I said, Lake Dallas is playing Reedy. Some of the other teams in there, there's Little Elm and Prosper, and the other ones are missing my mind right now. But it's a good, solid district. So it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I'm not saying it is.
No, just sometimes we do have some districts, especially if you get an outside Dallas district once in a while, you get a bit of a free pass for a week. That's not the case in this one.
And in the Division I, that's who they're playing is Little Elm and.
Well, I don't know yet, but those are some of the top teams. They're trying to figure out what their district's going to be this as well. Prosper is one of those teams up there, McKinney North.
And I think those two teams that are going to play Division I out of this, I think just the fact that they make it, if they can be competitive in those games, I think it's a huge success for those teams.
Yep.
And if they win, like you said, icing on the cake. But I think this is a good stepping stone for them to be able to go into the future.
Because they're always, even though you want to honor your seniors, your current seniors, you want to win for them and keep the season going. You're always thinking about building for the future too. And when you make the playoffs, you get that extra week of practice. You get just that tradition of saying, "Hey, we were back in the playoffs," and it gets the younger kids excited down to like the middle schools, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, get them excited about the next year. So it's always a great building block for the next year.
And I really think that if one of these two teams that go into Division I have a chance to win, I think for the entire district, that's a feather in their cap.
Yeah.
Because no one outside of maybe Lone Star did we think could go to Division I and actually make an impact, because those are that's a different ball game. That's like going straight from being a junior in high school to playing Alabama. I mean, it's a huge leap.
Yes.
To go from a smaller school to playing some of these massive schools that have a lot of big time talent there, and it really, people don't realize what between Division II and Division I is. It's big.
It can be, yeah.
It can be big, and it's sort of like I went to South Lake. It's like when some of these smaller schools went up to play South Lake.
Right.
They were in the same division, same school size, but they broke it up.
Yeah.
It wasn't really even a fair. And if one of these teams did go and win, it was a huge upset. That other school had bragging rights for like a decade. So I think that I think these kids can play well if they want to honor their seniors. Even if they don't win, if they put in a good effort and they really, really work hard, I think there's no losing situation with these two teams going up to Division I, because really they're really going out of a division that they've played in all year, because they've played more of the Lone Star, Reedy-sized schools and not used to playing the bigger schools. So I think it's a huge accomplishment regardless. Oh, no, I mean, and I think of too, like we're talking about Reedy. Even if Reedy doesn't win a playoff game, and I think they have a good chance to win a playoff game or two. It's a huge deal.
Still think back to last year when I saw them in their first varsity game, and Josh Foskey, who has turned out to be kind of their star quarterback, I talked to him after they got beaten 54-3, something like that, and he's like, "Man, this is like the most awesome thing ever. This is like the most exciting game playing there, And I'm like, it'd be great to see that he's got this more time to see how they develop and to see how quickly they've developed, and they're in the playoffs this year is pretty awesome. Yeah, they just got to remember, Lake Highlands for a long time, it takes one or two players, or it takes one or two schemes, or one set of new students coming into varsity that can change everything, and people have got to remember that. And all they're doing now is building a tradition of winning. That's right. And when that happens, it starts attracting families from other places or people who want to move to those schools to get a chance at winning, because that's how you build franchise. Winning brings winning. Yeah, winning brings winning, exactly. So I see this weekend is going to be not a bye weekend for a lot of these schools, but I think it's going to be a more entertaining weekend, because there could be possibilities of trap games in this. Right. Because Lone Star already has made the playoff. Yep. So there can be a chance that a school's that is not really predicted to win could have a chance, because they might have checked out, which can be a big deal for that one school to beat Lone Star. So I think a lot of these schools could have very entertaining. Yeah, you mentioned Lone Star. Independence is playing Lone Star this week, and if they win, they have an outside shot at making the playoffs. Huge deal underdog. For the school. But at the same time, even if they don't win, this is a building block, potentially building block week for them. If you can hang with Lone Star, with a team that is a state contender, you gain confidence for next year. Yeah. Independence, just about all of these Frisco programs are young programs. They're still establishing tradition, and so it's. They got to watch out a little bit though, because if they go and they shake the dog's cage and they start bragging all year,
Lone Star next year going, okay, we're going to make an example out of you the next year. So if these schools are going to bring it and they either come close to winning or win, they better make sure that they are training in the offseason like crazy, because that next time, they're not going to forget.
That's right.
Those juniors and those sophomores and some of the freshmen that are on these teams are going to go, we'll show you next year. So they got to bring their A game this week, and then next year they've got to make sure.
I know, and a lot of these coaches and kids are friends too, and after,
they'll brag.
Right. Well, then after the Lone Star game, Jeff Rayburn, coach for Lone Star, was very, not that he was trying to be careful, but he was like saying, hey, we knew Reedy was going to be a good team. Like, even though they beat him pretty handily, he was very complimentary of him, saying they do a lot of things really well. They're well coached. And in their second year, they're moving along fast. They know they're a force to be reckoned with, both this year and in the coming year.
So I want to, since this is a week before the end of the season for a lot of these teams, I want to sort of dive into what next year looks like a little bit. Lone Star, we've all talked about, Nick Bolton's leaving, and a lot of these seniors are now leaving that are big. Do these powers, because we'll be able to talk a lot more about the other teams this offseason, but right now, these two teams, Reedy and Lone Star, do you see them being able to continue this tradition next year? Because we all know Nick is a staple of that defense. He's the quarterback, and obviously the quarterback's leaving on offense. So do they have players that show signs of at least being up to holding the mantle of these two guys that have really made a big difference this year on offense and defense? Do they have guys that are going to be able to step into that situation?
I would say, nothing's guaranteed, but Lone Star has established enough of a pipeline now. They were a state runner-up 2 years ago, and they're developing this program. People all want to be part of that football program who are there, so they get great participation numbers. They got 2 freshman teams, 2 JV, or one JV, maybe 2 JV teams, but a lot of participation. So there's a lot of kids to choose from. And this year, Rayburn had told me, this is the most depth they've ever had. So it's not even just those stars. They've got a lot of guys to choose from. And I think Reedy is the same way, in that they're a few steps behind Lone Star. They haven't had as many years. But you get a fast forward when you have this kind of success. It gets people excited. It brings kids who are going to be freshmen and maybe even sophomores. They want to be part of that football program. If they were on the fence before, good athletes, like, am I going to play basketball, baseball, and just stick with that, or do I want to be part of that football program? This is the kind of season that convinces you. When you go out there, you see the great support they have at a game.
Especially if the coach is encouraging you to play. That's some of these players who are great athletes that maybe aren't getting, I can't say recruited because they're going to the school, but the coach isn't saying, hey, come play football, come play football, come play football. They maybe that were maybe, and it has the same effect. The players that maybe were going, I'm going to play basketball this year, I'm a basketball player. Now they can go from not on the fence to on the fence a little bit, and maybe get looked at by the coach and some of that stuff this year after basketball season and stuff like that. But you're absolutely right. There are a lot of players that can choose a lot of sports, and what they've done is they go, you know what? I was sort of holding out because Reedy's sort of a new program. My goodness. If they could hold their own in the playoffs and at least win, I want to be a part of it.
You want to win. You want to be a part of a winner. And that's huge for high school. It's huge for any sport coach in high school. But high school football coaches, you need to recruit your hallways.
Yes.
You have to get those players out there.
You see the big players, the athletic players, you're like, I want you on my team.
And that's a big reason for you see the flashy uniforms and things like now. The Frisco schools are lucky they have a Nike contract. Yes. You want to be part of it. They want the cool helmet. They want slogans. They want things like that.
They want the shirts. They want all that stuff that's almost prideful.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're a part of a winner, you want to be part of the program. And using a term in a good way, like a gang. You don't want people to have gang affiliations, but to be part of a club, on the positive side of that, you want that, and that's exciting for them. And when you're a winning team, it just attracts all kinds of people.
It's like a fraternity.
It's like a fraternity.
So I think the best way of explaining this, and we were talking a little bit about the McKinney running back and how he looks like Rex Burkhead, who ties into Nebraska. If you look at Nebraska, remember 4 or 5 years ago they had the black shirts? That if they were an elite defense, they were allowed to have those black shirts.
It's a pride
that
thing.
Same pride thing goes with these schools where these kids are like, I want to be a part of a program that's elite, and I get to wear the colors.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal. And like you said, I've seen some of the shirts and some of the uniforms they had before Nike got involved. Their swagger game has gotten a lot better with Nike coming in, because Nike's like, we're going to provide all this stuff. Don't worry about getting a local person to do it, because we'll do a professional job. I mean, you get some of the stylized shirts that they have, their warm-up shirts and stuff. It is better than a lot of college program shirts, or at least par with them.
It looks really good, yeah. And you know, you don't want it to be all about that, but there's no denying 20 years ago, virtually every boy, most of the boys who went into a school were going to try to play football.
Yeah.
They're not going to all be on the team, but they were interested. You know, there's so many more interests now and things that are dividing people's attention. Not only, the tech, everything out there. So you have to make it worth their while. It's not just come out and play for the football team. You have to sell them on it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the cool swag.
And let's not underplay the swag, because what happens is if you go to if you go to university, whether it's TCU, Oklahoma, A&M or Texas, that's what you wear. You wear your team's colors, whether you're on the football team or you're just a student there.
Right.
It's all about the swag.
Right.
It's all about representing. And that's what is so enticing about, like you said, a Reedy and now getting some of these kids, because when you're on the football field, you have a helmet on. No one knows who you are.
Right.
When you're wearing that shirt, people know exactly who you are and what school you went to, and you have pride for it. That's why we think it's such a big deal.
And I think with the Frisco schools, when you are a young school, this isn't just the Frisco schools, but they've been growing and opening so quickly. The biggest thing coaches have to develop is identity. Because it's
branding.
Like you have to brand yourself. And so look at what Reedy has done. How are they identified? Hey, we are a playoff team. We are a good team. We're a solid team, only in their second year. It's not a team just building. They have an identity as a strong football program.
I think going along that lines, if they really wanted to push that brand out, I think their brand is not just we're a good playoff team. That brand is we've done this in 2 years. What is it going to be like in 2 more years?
Right. Yeah.
Look at what we've done in such a short period of time. Just wait. Be a part of the future, because it's only going to get better.
Yep.
Someone like Lone Star's been been a powerhouse for a while. And whether the only growth they have left is to win a championship, and then after that they can't grow.
Right, you got to
become
maintain,
more than that. Yeah,
maintain.
So there's probably a little bit more excitement with Reedy when it comes to getting the kids in there, because you can say, look at what we've done.
Right.
But Lone Star has an established brand. They go, we're winners.
Yeah.
All we got to do now is win a championship, and then we got to hold it.
All we got to do.
All we got to do.
The hardest thing around, but
all right.
But yeah.
Well, thanks. We will see you next week. We're only going to get Matt in today once this week. Sorry, we're only going to have him in once this week. We talked a little bit about what's happening this weekend and a little bit in the future, but we can't wait to have him in next week, because we're really going to start diving into the playoffs at that point.
We'll know all the pairings and everything.
Yeah, it'll be awesome. Next.